This is CNN Breaking News.
This is Piers Morgan Live. Breaking news tonight. A Malaysia Airlines plane carrying 239 people bound for Beijing is missing. According to a statement from the airline, air traffic control lost contact with flight MH370 from Kuala Lumpur at 2:40 a.m., about 2 hours after takeoff. We're awaiting a press briefing from the airline, which of course we'll bring you live when it happens. I want to go straight to CNN's David Mackenzie from Beijing. David, what do we know about this missing plane?
Well, what we know is this plane went missing, according to state media, in Vietnamese airspace, Piers. It was due to land here at 6:30 in the morning local time in Beijing. This Boeing 777 from Malaysian Airlines, a packed plane with 239 people on board, including 12 crew members and 2 infants. They are searching frantically for where the plane went down, if it did go down. At this stage, very sketchy details. 13 different nationalities on board. The majority on that plane were Chinese nationals, around 160, according to Chinese state TV. So a desperate search. Malaysia Airlines has notified, or is in the process of notifying, the next of kin, and this Boeing 77 seems to have vanished at this point.
So there's no confirmation the plane has crashed. What are the other possibilities if it hasn't crashed?
Well, if it hasn't crashed, then it would have presumably landed at this stage. There are no indications at this of any confirmed reports of a plane landing anywhere, either in an emergency situation or not. Of course, it didn't arrive at its destination here in Beijing. I'm sure there are worried families at Beijing's airport wondering what happened, and so Malaysian Airlines are expecting to give more details soon. At this stage, though, they say they don't know what happened. The plane left Malaysian airspace, lost contact at around 2:40 local Malaysia time with the Malaysian authorities, and basically vanished into thin air. At this point, they're obviously expecting the worst, but hoping for some positive situation. But with those 239 people on board, certainly very worrying times for this flight.
David Mackenzie, thank you very much. I want to go now to James Kallstrom, the former FBI Assistant Director who investigated TWA's Flight 800. Welcome to you, James Kallstrom. What is your reading of the situation here? What does it mean when an airline says a plane is missing? Does that mean that they believe it has crashed?
Well, apparently they're not getting any transponder, no response from the transponder on the plane, and the air traffic control is not seeing the aircraft on the radar. Of course, it's lucky. It's a good thing that that path is over land, if not over water. I'm familiar with that Vietnam area, but that's rough terrain. So, if it lost its transponder, in other words, that's the plane giving out a signal as to where I am. This is my altitude. This is my heading. Obviously, that's been lost somehow. The communications with the company itself that owns the aircraft has apparently been lost, and I'm sure there's radars there over Vietnam that would have seen it drop off the radar, and that's going to give them a pretty good idea of where the plane is.
The Malaysia Airlines VP of Operations Control, Fuad Sharuji, told Anderson Cooper's show a little while ago, at the moment we have no idea where this aircraft is right now. There are internet rumours, completely unconfirmed, some suggesting it may have landed somewhere in Vietnamese land and has suffered an electrical fault. Now, that may be completely bogus, but is it possible that a plane could lose all contact with its airline and yet still be able to land without electrical power at all?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it's you're getting hairy if you're coming into some airline unannounced.
Right.
But it could happen, sure, if they've got 5,000 or 6,000 feet of runway and they don't get into the flight path of other airplanes and don't crash. They could certainly do that. That area over Vietnam, at least when I was there many years ago, is depending on where they actually were. That's not very highly populated, except in the couple of major cities. So there's rice paddies, and there's as you get over towards Cambodia, it's very, very tropical and wooded, and so if it did crash, I mean, they're going to have an idea of where it is. Now, it could take a long time to find it, though, in that type of environment.
James Kallstrom, stay with us. I'm going to turn now to Matt Wald. He's a New York Times aviation correspondent. Matt Wald, from what Malaysian Airlines statement says, I'll read it in full. We deeply regret we have lost all contacts with flight MH370. The passengers were 13 different nationalities. Malaysia Airlines is currently working with the authorities who have activated their search and rescue team to locate the aircraft. Our team is currently calling the next of kin of passengers and crew. You've covered many similar incidents over the years. What is your reading of the specific wording of that statement?
If the airplane isn't showing up on radar, it does have a beacon, a radio beacon, which is supposed to go off if it crashes, so you can find it. If it's landed at an airport, we'd know it. It probably does not have enough fuel to be still in the air, so this sure doesn't look good.
We believe it had 7.5 hours of fuel. It had been in the air for 2 hours, but obviously that was a number of hours ago. So you have to assume that it has landed in some capacity, either crash landed or landed because of some other fault. Is it plausible, as some are suggesting in unconfirmed reports, that it suffered a major electrical fault but would still be able to land without crash landing?
I don't know how anybody would have an idea of what had hit it. Usually in a crash, you don't know what happened until either you can examine the wreckage or you get a hold of the black boxes. This airplane has very advanced black boxes, and they are likely to end up back in Washington, D.C., because the plane is of American manufacture. The United States, by treaty, has a role in evaluating, and in most of the third world, if a plane crashes and it's a Boeing, they ask the Americans to figure it out.
The Boeing 77200 STATS is a long-range, wide-body, twin-engine jet airliner, commonly referred to as a 777. It's capable of 18 hours flying time, but we know it only had enough fuel for less than half of that. It incorporates more technologies than any other previous Boeing airliner, and has only suffered, we believe, one other crash, which was the Asiana airline crash in San Francisco last summer, since its conception in 1995.
There was also one at Heathrow. The plane came in after a long descent, and there turned out to be ice in the fuel lines, and it came in short. No one was killed in that one. The one in San Francisco on July 6th, there does not appear to have been anything wrong with the plane. There's a generic concern about these airplanes that they're very highly automated, and they may be more automated than some pilots could handle, and that if you fly them enough, your basic flying skills deteriorate, or maybe you didn't have the basic flying skills to begin with. But again, it's a little early to say what happened here. There's about 1,200 of these airplanes in service. They've been in service since 1995, and they have a very good safety record. This plane can go 5,000 to 9,000 nautical miles. This trip was a lot shorter than that, and it was lightly loaded, so it would be normal not to carry more fuel than you need to safely complete the flight, and if necessary, fly to an alternate airport.
Mr. Wall, stand by. We're just going to go to Richard Quest now, CNN correspondent, just to update viewers who are tuning in. A Malaysia Airlines plane carrying 239 people en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing has gone missing. Richard Quest, what are you hearing about anything that may explain why this plane has gone missing?
Oh, there's absolutely no way that anybody can have any idea of what has happened. We're talking just 2 or 3 hours into the event. The plane was 2 hours into its flight from KL up to Beijing. Now, traditionally, that is the safest part of the flight. The two most riskiest parts are takeoff, obviously, and landing. This plane would have been at altitude. It would have been on autopilot at the time, obviously, and it would have been making sort of good progression. Malaysian Airlines has 15 777s in the fleet. The average age is about 13, 14 years. This particular aircraft that we're talking about tonight, if it's the one that everybody online is talking about, was delivered to Malaysia in 2002. It's just over, just shy of 12 years old. Now, none of those facts should in any shape or form form the basis for speculation, because Malaysian is an extremely experienced operator of the 777-200 series, one of the most experienced operators, one of the first airlines to get that particular plane. So from that point of view, you know, we are grappling in the dark, if you like, for reasons and possibilities and prospects. But all we can say at the moment is that the aircraft itself has had an enviable safety record. The two incidents that you were talking about with Matt Wald a moment ago, the Asiana, where frankly we seem to know exactly what happened there, or at least we know it wasn't the aircraft, and the British Airways one a few years ago, which crash landed at Heathrow, where we know that was the ice in the fuel lines. So Piers, this is the conundrum. Any time a plane they lose contact with a plane that is at altitude in the cruise, this causes great consternation because this is the safest part of the flight.
Obviously, very concerning to everybody who has somebody on that plane that Malaysian Airlines say they just simply have no idea where this plane has gone. Would an airline say simply it is missing if they already knew it had crashed, or would they just come out from your experience and say the plane has crashed? Do you think that it is genuine that they literally have no idea where it is?
Oh, they will not. They will not say that the plane has come out of the sky and crashed until they are absolutely certain that that is what has happened. The normal form for these sort of things, and like Matt was saying, you know, anyone like myself who's covered these for some years, there is a form that this takes. Let's talk about what the airline will be doing. The moment that there is an incident of this nature, the very senior management of the airline, the CEO, the chief engineer, the chief PR people, everybody in the very, very most senior people in the airline will have gone to a special room. In some cases it's known as the epic room, in some cases the emergency room. And this has been designed and constructed so that information flows in to the directorate and out again. It's a sterile room, so information is very carefully controlled. And they will have decided in that room, or at least in that process, what statement to make. And I've got the statement here, Piers. We deeply regret, interesting use of language, to have lost all contacts with this flight. Now, we know by the amount of fuel that was loaded, the length of the flight, the amount of time that's transpired, that it probably